All right, so this is going to be a quick video, somewhat quick. I'm going to try to do it as fast as I can for a pixel implementation and debugging walkthrough. So we have a pre-set up requirements here. So you need to make sure that your pixel, your platform account ID is correct. And I'm actually going to show you what I mean by that. So let's say we're working with a Facebook pixel here, right? So this is the library load portion of what that looks like. So this fires once per page load, right? And this loads your pixel. Now, typically it also sends a page view event. You see right here, also once per page load, right? This one looks a little bit different. You see there's two pixel initialization. That's because you can, sometimes sites want to initialize multiple pixels. Maybe a vendor wants to put their pixel, so you would need to initialize multiple pixels. So, but it's not typical. So you keep in mind of that. Usually it'll be one. So that's that script, and then there are other scripts for sending events, right? So there's a bit of granularity when it comes to the meta events. You have track single, which sends a event only to a certain pixel. So say like that script I showed you before, you have 2, 3, or more, pixels loaded on your site, but you only want to send an event to one of them, not the others. You would use track single, and then you would send the standard event name. When you see just track, you're working only with standard events. Page view, it's a standard event. So you put your pixel ID here to identify which one you want to send to, and then you put your event name. You can also do track single custom, send a custom event to one pixel, or you can do your just standard, track custom, and that's gets sent to all pixels initialized on the page. So you need to understand these granular things about the integration, whatever you're setting up or integrating or whatever pixel you're putting onto your site, because the more you understand about the platform you're integrating with the site, and also the more you understand about your environment, your website, what scripts already on there, right? What pixels already on there, what pieces of code are already on there that once I place my pixel, it might interfere with it, or those scripts might, mess up your pixel. Who knows? You need to understand these parameters before you place something to, really know what is it you're trying to achieve, pretty much. So you need to identify your triggering conditions. So if we were to work with the current example I just gave you, that's going to be fired on a page view. So I'll show you the page view triggers within GTM. And maybe you're working with a different, before I go any further, maybe you're working, with a different web tagging tool. Like Adobe Launch. So I created a little cheat sheet just so that if you're working with Adobe Launch, you can still use this video because it's pretty much the same thing, but they just call things a bit different. So like your variables are data elements, your templates are extensions, right? You'll see here your container is a property, your tag or rule action, your trigger event or condition. You'll see, you can pause the video and check this out if you want. Anyways, back to what we were doing. I'm showing you the page view. So you have these are page view, built-in page view triggers, because GTM gives you various built-in triggers you could use. Consent initialization, so that's just when, if you're using like Google consent mode, if consent has been initialized, initialization of GTM, actual page view, so when GTM fires page view hit, or the DOM ready, so the site DOM is loaded. A lot of times you'll be using DOM ready because some pixels require interacting with some kind of element on the site, or some kind of manipulation. Maybe you're running through that piece of code on your site. A lot of the platforms like Contentful, you want to fire on DOM ready to make sure the site's fully loaded. The DOM is fully loaded. Or you could do window load when the window has fully loaded. So these are your different page view triggers. Let's go back to our checklist here. Okay, so your parameters. Let's say, for example, you want to send a, so you want to do an event for maybe on like a grooming shop, right? And you do baths, spa, haircut, whatever. You could send a key called service. So you could change this from param1 to service. And if somebody buys a bath, value 1 would say bath. If someone buys a a haircut, value 1 would say haircut. And a lot of times you do this is because you want to create custom conversions in Meta, right? And you want to do that based on a certain action people have taken or a certain type of conversion. So you could do, okay, people who converted on this URL but bought this service, bought haircuts only. So that's how you would set this up from the technical side. So yeah, I showed you the page view triggers. Yeah, so parameters, your naming convention. So naming convention is important not only for just peace of mind and clarity, but also for saving yourself once your container gets too big. There are enterprise level companies with 500 tags, 700 triggers. So once you get to that level and your container is that large, it really helps you to break things down. Like I'll give you an example. Say you have tags that only fire on a website for pets, right? And you have tags that only fire on the dog toys page. So you would want to put dog toys here, right? And however you want to break this down, if you want to do it by type or you want to do it by dash, it's up to you. But you would put dog, toys, right? And that would allow you to search for all your tags that fire on the dog toys page. You'll also notice that when you search, the search doesn't just work off the name, it also works off the type, right? So that's another thing you can use. Say you want to do GA4 event, you just type GA4, you'll see all the GA4 related tags, event, same thing, right? So that's the reason why you want to do have good naming conventions. Yeah, so templates or custom HTML. To be honest with you, if you're just looking for the easiest, most straightforward way to set things up, you're going to want to do a template. That's assuming, of course, that they actually have a template for what you're working with. So if you're working with Facebook, there's a template for that. You could use it. I like to use the custom code because you have more control, but it is up to you. For the reason that's not loading, I wanted to show you the marketplace. It's okay. I already have the template enabled for this demo. Just go to that. Anyways, like I said, once that button I was trying to click, I was opening the marketplace, and what you would do is you would search for things like Facebook Pixel, you click enable, and then it'll pop up here. So if you wanted to enable the Snapchat Pixel template, you would go back to where I just was and search Snap, enable, and then come back here to set it up. And it'll look like this, right? So you have your Pixel ID. If you're setting a standard event, these are all the possible standard events. On a custom event, you can put that in. You can even use a variable. Maybe you want to dynamically decide, decide an event name based on a certain parameters and meant. And then each template has various advanced settings you can go through. Each template will look a bit different. So do know when you're working with templates that the template provider is managed by them. So you will get updates on it maybe a couple times a month, maybe a couple times every 6 months, who knows. But just be mindful of that. It'll show up here in templates, say you have an update, and then kind of how if you're in Git, you have a versioning control where you see what's been changed, and you can kind of compare, see, okay, they changed this line of code, or they removed this option, and you can confirm or deny the update. It's not forced, so but yeah, it'll show up here. Tag setup. Okay, let's open tag. Actually, wait, before I even do that, I want to show you how you even set GTM up on a site. It's good to know what that looks like. So when you just click on your GTM ID here, you'll see two scripts. You'll see this goes high in the head, and this goes immediately after the opening body tag, right? So you'll see your GTM ID here. Just loading this container. Another thing I do want to mention before I do that, go to environments. I want you to understand environments as well. So custom environments, and you have the default environments. If you open up your default environment, you're going to look at this. You'll see some parameters on here. You'll see, but the one we want to look at is GTM Preview. GTM Preview equals environment 1. Environment 1 is your live container. Okay, it's your live one. Now I created a custom one, and if we go to, you'll see GTM Preview equal to environment 19. The reason that the reason I wanted to bring that to your attention is because you want to make sure you're publishing to the right environment. Excuse me, the right environment, right? Because if you publish this, say, to QA accidentally, and then you go on your live site, you go right to the homepage, and you say, okay, why isn't it showing? You could go into DevTools like this, type in Control F, look for tag. okay, find that head script, and you'll see, oh, well, this one doesn't look like I have it placed. So that means it's automatically going to the live. Yeah, okay. If you don't see it, it's going to the live, but that's a good thing to check. Go in here and check, okay, see what GTM Preview ID is set to. It's not set to a specific ID, so that means this is the live container. If it were a GTM environment, environment 19, you would see that GTM Preview query parameter right there, and it would load my QA environment. Okay, back to tag setup. Now that you understand how GTM is placed and ensuring your right environments are set. So let's say we wanted to do custom HTML, right? Because you could do template, you could do custom HTML, and you'll see over Google. Here, if you want to do a floodlight counter, Google Ads, GA. Grab my testing scripts here. You see these have some loggers for testing. All right, so which pixel ID? I'm just typing some random numbers. I don't have a pixel ID to work with. This is track single, so this means this is going only to the pixel ID we set. If we didn't want to do track single, we just do track and then do that. If you want to send parameters, you can send your key value parameters here. If you don't, you can remove that too. Then track page view, and you're good to go. Yeah. Now with the triggers, let's see, maybe we want to page view. Okay, we want to fire this on page view. So name a convention, we can say Facebook page view. Maybe this is I know we're not firing on a specific page, but if you were firing on a specific page, you could put that in there. Be as detailed or granular as you can, just for this example. Back to our checklist. Triggers, name convention, variables. Yeah, maybe you wanted to send a variable. Yeah, let's do it like that. Maybe you want to send a variable, right? Maybe you want to send, like I said, service, or maybe product, right? And how we would do that, put some curlies in there, doubles. Okay, because I already have a variable created for that. I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like because it was already created. So let me explain it to you. You see the built-in variables there. You see these custom ones on the bottom. So this is a data layer variable. What a data layer variable does is it looks for a key with the name you set here. So maybe you're working with e-commerce events, so you would do e-commerce dot whatever your path would be, maybe action field D, right, something like that. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I have a local live server site that I set up for testing. Okay, so when I right click this button here, learn GTM, fires a data layer event. You'll see that fire right here. Learn GTM, right? So if I had a kind of like a dot path, maybe I had e-commerce here, and then under it, tab, kind of indent, and then currency, I would do e-commerce dot currency to reference USD. But yeah, to see these in the console, so you go DevTools F12, select the console, and if you have a data layer on the site, type data, capital L layer, you see it's already exists. So you just hit tab and complete that, enter, and then you'll see all the data layer events that are fired. You see DOM, and GTM dot is for GTM standard event, built-in event that's on a custom. So GTM DOM is loaded, GTM is loaded. You see my custom event. You see a GTM click. I click the link, so it has a history change as well. You see history change and use history changes a lot of times for SPS sites for tracking dynamic page changes, route changes. under the link click, etc. I get ahead of myself, make sure I'm on pace with the checklist here. Okay. Let me just go over showing you creating of other variables though. This is only one type. You have data layer variables, but you also have custom JavaScript. Maybe you wanted to do a custom variable for pulling something out of the URL of the site. Maybe you wanted to pull this ID right here, right? Or this one, or maybe you wanted to pull something else. You could write JavaScript to do that, and then return that that section, that slug of the URL as this custom variable. So you could then use that value further in your tags or triggers. You want to use your trigger as a criteria to fire. Maybe only fire on a URL that contains X, right? Or tags, you want to send parameters. Maybe you want to send something from the URL as a parameter. You could do all kinds of things with custom JavaScript variables. What else? We have constants. This sounds like you just put G and then it's always going to return G. Element visibility, if an element by ID is, or we do CSS selector, just copy the CSS selector from inspect. That's visible. You could use that for like kind of a check, if this element is visible, then fire tag or something like that. You could do. Yeah, there are various variables you could go through, work through those. Publishing, okay. So to get to the debugger here, hit preview. I know it says publish in the checklist, but I'm going to show you debugging first. So there are various tools you can use to debug. So I hit preview. You put your URL you want to debug in there. Hit connect. Oh, I should show you this one. Let me go back. So when you open the debugger, you'll notice this little checkbox right here, include debug signal. So what that'll do is it'll have this debug signal at the end of your URL. And a lot of times, if maybe you're testing some kind of tag or some kind of criteria that requires the URL to look a certain way or have a certain value, if you're doing that, make sure you uncheck this so it doesn't interfere with your logic, potentially. I have a tag already set up for our little preview or little test here. And it is learn GTM click, this GA4 tag. So it's just sending an event name that I created. The event name could be anything, whatever you want. And the trigger, I'm using a data layer event. So all this basically, all this is a data layer event trigger is basically just an event listener. It listens in the data layer for a certain event name. So once this event name enters the data layer, it'll fire your tag. I also have additional criteria for product equals GTM course. And what that looks like in the code side, it's just a simple little element I created here. You'll see my event, right? You see on click, I have firing this data layer event, and I'm sending some parameters, product, GTM course, price, $100, currency USD. That's how it's on the code. And once that enters the data layer, this will detect it, fire my tag. Right? So let's test that out. GTM, my event fired. Event 6, you'll see this page when you click an event here in your summary here. This will always be the page title. So if you're testing, you're going through multiple pages, they'll show up. So you have maybe, for example, you got a pet site, you go to dogs, the home page, and then another drop down will open up here. They'll have the events for each page. So for this page, you click into our event. We want to debug event 6, this data layer event that fired. Here you can see the actual data layer event, what it looks like. You're doing like G4 e-commerce events, this will be much bigger. So this slide has a drop down. So it'll show you tags fired, tags not fired. Like that, show that. And if you go on, say you're debugging it and you're, imagine our tag didn't fire, right? And you go, okay, why didn't it fire? You'd see your tag that didn't fire. So you want to open this up, go to meta, and you see Facebook why didn't fire. Don't get confused. It's only because you're viewing this specific event. Okay, so if you go ahead and click the page title, you'll see all the tags that did fire. Okay, and you'll see that these tags did fire on their own, right? So yeah, going back to our tag that we are actually looking at, you can see it did fire. The reason being is that it matched on GTM course and our event. Now this is a GA4 tag, so you can debug further and see the hits that was sent to GA4. We sent to this GID. You can see all the other parameters in the payload here. So if we're debugging on site, do we want to type collect? Let's see, this is the URL sent to, so you would just type collect in here, and you'll see the same thing show up. Okay, you could verify through DevTools that did fire. There are some other tools that you could use that I like to use. They are debugging Amazon tags. They have the Amazon tag helper. They have the Meta pixel helper, Pinterest, Reddit, Snapchat, TikTok. These will help you, and you click them, it pretty much just lets you know, okay, pixel fire, I've sent this event, had this error or whatever. On there, one I really like to use though is called Omnibug. I think it makes it much easier for people to debug in DevTools because you don't actually have to go to console, type anything, or go to network and type anything. You can just click this after you install it from the Google extension marketplace, and then it'll show you pretty much the same thing, but in a much easier to view kind of UI. You see what's fired. Yeah, so when you do want to go ahead and submit and publish, you hit submit. Make sure that you are as descriptive as you are with your tags, variables, and triggers in the version name. If you're working with a company that is managing your Jira work through a ticketing software or something like Jira, I would always like to put the ticket ID in the version name so you can reference and link to that ticket to the version of GTM. It's much easier to track. If you want to put a description, do that. We already talked about environment. If I publish to QA, I'd be going to environment 19. If I publish to live, I'd be going to the live container. And it really depends on where you placed these container scripts. And that's where the tag changes will show up. So if you want to publish to QA, and then your QA does their QA work, and then they sign off on it, you publish it to live after. So if you don't have any errors and everything's good to go, once you hit publish, it'll complete. If you do have an error, sometimes you'll have it, working with JavaScript, it'll say, hey, okay, you have a JavaScript error on this tag at this line, and then you can fix that and try again. So I showed you debugging. I showed you using DevTools. These are the when you're in network tab looking for the requests, you want to see the payload. Like I mentioned with GA4, you'd search for collect, but with Facebook, you really can just put LinkedIn, or you can just put search LinkedIn, Pinterest, I put PIN, it comes up. TikTok. Check that out. Debugging tools, showed you all the extensions you could use. Omnibug is a pretty good one. Doing all this helps you really to basically just confirm the event fires with the right payload. What you set up in your tag is what is actually being sent to your destination. And another thing is, post-deployment QA. When you're deploying your tags, everything looks good, right? You also want to make sure the data is actually showing up in your destination. So maybe you're sending custom events to Meta. Well, you want to go into your event manager and make sure those are actually populating in there. Sometimes it takes like an hour or 2 hours, but definitely want to do that before you sign off on it and say everything's good to go. Another thing is that for this test, I tested it in a normal window because it was easier to display everything, all the information. But in reality, you should test in incognito, so you can reduce the variables that could interfere with your requests being made off the site. You want to make sure you don't have any kind of like ad blockers, because if you're working with ad scripts, a lot of times it's going to block your scripts. So yeah, and another thing is that the GTM debugger is slow. Okay, sometimes it's kind of finicky. If you're on a VPN, it's going to mess it up. If you have a slow network, it's going to mess it up. Excuse me. And a lot of times, the GTM debugger preview mode is kind of like a sheltered environment. It slows things down. So it gives tags time to fire, libraries time to load. So a lot of times, if you're working with issues that are like based around load order timing, things may work well in Tag Assistant, but not in reality actually on your site. So that's why you always test in GTM, but also with DevTools as well. So keep that in mind. Yeah, I'll include this checklist with the video, and I hope this helped. If you were to take one thing away from this video that would be most important is to completely understand your environment, so your website that you're working with, what code is already on there, how it's going to interfere with the integration you want to set up. For example, with Meta, you also want to fully understand Metapixel. They have great documentation. How does the Metapixel work? How do I send parameters? What are the different specifics about it, like granular items, like okay, sending track versus single track. So that'll really help you avoid or mitigate errors if you fully understand how things are going to collide with each other. Yeah. So thank you for watching, and I hope this helped.